Hello friends, a very good morning to all of you. Come, let's start with the custom valuation, the very next second session. Let's repeat the first session, whatever we did in the first session itself. We had started with the imported goods valuation. Whatever we did, that whenever goods are coming from abroad, at that point of time, the importer has to follow a certain systematic procedure, wherein the importer shall obtain letter of credit from the Indian banker and shall get it forwarded to the exporter for securing his payment. And after security of payment, exporter shall dispatch the goods to be exported. After incurring various expenses like cost of production, selling and distribution overheads, other overheads, taxes and duties, freights and insurance and otherwise. And after loading such goods at the foreign port, the total cost incurred by him will be known as FOB value, free on board value. Generally at that particular point of time, exporter transfer the ownership of such goods in the name of importer under a document known as bill of lading. Since the ownership of goods has been transferred in the name of importer, therefore, any other expense incurred after FOB has to be incurred by the importer himself, which generally includes freight and insurance. These are the two expenses which has to be added while determining assessable value under customs, what we did under Rule 10 Sub-Rule 2 in the previous session. Rule 10 Sub-Rule 2 has clarified that freight and insurance shall always be added while determining the assessable value, because without these two expenses, the goods cannot be landed over or cannot be taken over to the port of importation. Wherein we did that in freight, if the goods are imported by air mode, then we have to add 20% of FOB or actual cost, whichever is lower. However, in case of any other mode, we have to consider the actual cost if it is given, and if actual cost is not given, then we have to add 20% of FOB. Whereas in case of insurance, if actual cost is given, then always add actual cost, and if actual cost is not given, then you have to add 1.125% of FOB. The aggregate of FOB, freight and insurance will amount to CIF, and this is the value at which goods being landed or goods being taken to the port of importation. Since duty has to be computed at the port of importation, therefore, the assessable value has to be taken as the aggregate of all the expenses incurred up to such port, wherein the goods taken to the Indian port or port of importation and the cost incurred thereupon will be known as CIF value, which shall be taken as your assessable value, upon which duty has to be computed and paid by the importer to the custom officer, post which importer can clear these goods from the custom port. Okay. So mainly, while determining the assessable value, we have to make certain additions under Rule 10, which has two parts, Rule 10.1 and 10.2, wherein we already covered Rule 10.2, which includes implied additions. Implied means these additions has to be added irrespective of whether these are given in the questions or not. And the major concern is that since duty has to be computed at the port of importation, therefore any expense incurred before such port, that is pre-importation expense, has to be added therein while computing assessable value. For this purpose, Section 14 has been introduced under Custom Act, wherein under Section 14 of Custom Act, valuation procedure has been defined. Section 14 have two parts, Section 14 subsection 1 and Section 14 subsection 2. Under 14 subsection 2, a tariff value has to be notified. This value is the value which is notified by the central government himself. That is, whenever central government is of the opinion that there is any economic fluctuation in any particular article, therefore, to stabilize such fluctuation, government can notify the value of such goods only for the purpose of computing custom duty. And the value so notified by government will be known as tariff value. For example, if I say that suddenly in the Indian economy, onion has become expensive because its demand is high but supply has been reduced due to some climatic condition. The climate is not good, due to which the crops have been deteriorated, due to which the supply has been reduced up to a certain limit. And due to reduced supply and increased demand, the selling price of onion has been increased from rupees 20 to rupees 100. Now, on this particular selling price, let's say custom duty has to be computed at the rate 40%. So if I'll compute 40% duty on 100 rupees, it would amount to 40 rupees. And the market price of this onion, if I'll import it from abroad, in order to stabilize my market condition, because my local market does not have sufficient supply, due to which I am importing onion from abroad, and because of importation we are charging basic custom duty on such importation, basic duty on such importation at the rate 40%, my market price would amount to 140 rupees. Now government is of the opinion that market is already suffering through high economic fluctuation on this particular product, which is generally consumed by all class of persons including lower purchasing group. Therefore, to stabilize such amount, government said that whatever the selling price generally determines by the market forces under perfect competitive market. So if the selling price is 100, in this particular price government cannot interfere, but for the purpose of computing custom duty, government can notify the price of product as rupees 10. And government can say that while computing duty, the value of these goods shall be taken as rupees 10, due to which the duty thereupon would amount to rupees 4 and the market price will come to rupees 104, after wherein which we can provide a particular relief of rupees 36 to the general public by reducing the market price itself. And the value so notified by government will be known as tariff value. This is the tariff value. The tariff value shall always be notified by the government. Even if it is asked in the question, they shall mention this amount thereupon. And once central government notify the tariff value of any article, then custom duty on such article has to be determined on such tariff value, irrespective of its actual selling price or actual price of importation. So this is the theoretical provision wherein government says that under section 14 subsection 2, if government has notified the tariff value of an article, then assessable value of such goods shall always be taken as tariff value, upon which duty has to be computed. However, if on any article tariff value has not been notified, then under section 14 subsection 1, we shall be determined its assessable value, which is generally based on the transaction value. The transaction value is the selling price or the invoice price at which goods are being imported or exported. Under section 14 subsections 1, wherein the assessable value has to be computed on the basis of transaction value, section 14(1) delegated the power of determining such value on central government. And on the basis of power given under section 14 subsection 1, central government has notified the following rules. The first rule is custom determination of value of imported goods rules, and the second set of rule is custom determination of value of exported good rules. 2007. By the name itself, it has been clear that while determining the assessable value of imported goods, we have to follow this particular set of rule, and while determining the value of exported goods, we have to determining the consider the other set of rule. Now, in first set of rule, wherein we have to determine the assessable value of imported goods, it has been specifically clarified that all the rules needs to be proceed sequentially. That is, it says that rule 1, always remember, rule 1 of any set of rule decides the title of that particular rule. The title itself is Custom Determination of Value of Imported Goods Rules 2007. This particular title has been given under rule 1. Rule 2 generally talks about the definition of different terms being used under this particular set of rules that we will cover over the period of time. The main provision of valuation will start up from rule 3, wherein rule 3 says that while computing assessable value, we have to consider the transaction value or the invoice price or the selling price, in which we have to add certain additions under rule 10. Rule 3 says that assessable value shall be determined as transaction value plus additions under rule 10, wherein rule 10 comprises of two sub-rules set, that is rule 10 sub-rule 1 and rule 10 sub-rule 2, wherein under rule 10 sub-rule 2 implied additions being given in the name of freight and insurance, which we had already covered under session 1. Rule 10.1 comprises of expressed additions. Expressed additions means, now whatever the list we are going to do over the expressed additions, these expenses shall be added while computing assessable value only if they are specifically given in the question. That is, if these particular expenses are not specifically mentioned in the question, then these expenses shall not to be added while determining the assessable value. And the list of these expenses are being given hereunder. Under rule 10 sub-rule 1, we have list of specific expressed additions, which comprises of pre and post importation expenses. Let's do it in detail analysis. The first expenses talks about dismantling and installation charges. What does it mean? Let's see. Generally, in case of huge plant and machineries, whenever huge plant and machineries are being imported into India, it's obvious that they cannot be carried in the same as it is form. That is, for example, if I'll say that from Japan, a metro train has been imported to India to be installed in Delhi. So, a metro train is a huge in size appliance. This metro train must have been manufactured in Japan, and the manufacturer must have conducted its trial run. Trial run means the exporter, the manufacturer must have tried it out and make it run on the track so as to check its efficiency and to check its quality thereupon. And after getting satisfied on trial run, they must have dispatched it, they must have exported to India. So after trial run, while delivering it to India, they had to get it loaded in a vessel. But in a vessel, it cannot be carried in as it is form. Therefore, the exporter must have dismantled it in order to bring it in an unassembled form. Any expense incurred for bringing a huge plant and machinery in an unassembled form is known as dismantling charges, and the process of such unassembly is known as dismantling. And after such assembly, the final output will be known as CKD or SKD. CKD stands for completely knocked down goods. Knocked down means unassembled. So as the name specifies, that completely knocked down goods means each and every particle of the plant and machinery or equipment must have been dismantled, must have been unassembled to be carried on a convenient mode from one place to any other place. Whereas SKD stands for semi-knocked down goods, wherein the goods must have been dismantled but not in a detailed version. Rather, the particular part of the plant and machinery must have been dismantled, not as a whole but on a like a particular equipment, if we are carrying the car itself or the metro itself, so it might be possible that a compartment fitted with seats must have been carried as it is, and the two or more compartments being attached to each other must have been dismantled. So this is known as SKD, semi knockdown goods, and when these goods being unassembled and carried during the journey, they are known as CKD and SKD. After they have been brought to India or the place of importation, at the time of unloading, at the time of their landing, they must not have been get assembled then and there itself. Obviously, they have been carried in dismantled form only because of its huge size. Therefore, it has to be taken to the particular site where it has to be assembled in as it is CKD or SKD form. So if they have been imported for to be installed in Delhi, so after getting it unloaded at the Indian port, at the, for example, Mumbai port, from there itself to Delhi, they must have been carried in CKD, SKD form. And after reaching to the particular site where it has to be assembled, they get assembled therein after incurring an expense known as installation expenses. So two expenses generally arises, one is dismantling and the other one is installation. This particular dismantling expenses, obviously it has been incurred before bringing it to India. Therefore, it shall be treated as pre-importation expense. Whereas installation must have occurred in India after reaching to its destination point. Therefore, installation will be considered as post-importation expense. And as a common factor of custom valuation, pre-importation expense shall be added while computing assessable value, and post-importation expense shall be ignored while computing such value. So if in question dismantling charges have been given, always add them, considering them to be the pre-importation expense, and installation expenses as always to be ignored, to be treated as post-importation expense. Okay. The second expense we can talk about is about demurrage charges. Now what does it mean? Let's see. Generally, whenever goods are being taken in India, they have to get unloaded at the authorized port. Let's say goods being carried to India being unloaded at Mumbai Custom Port. So at Mumbai Custom Port, the importer have two options. They get two options, option 1 and option 2. Under option 1, importer can clear his goods on the payment of full custom duty. He can come over the port and make full payment of custom duty and make the clearance of their goods from then and there itself for their consumption in India. However, if the importer is unable to arrange duty payment or he is unwilling to pay duty at particular point of time, then he have an option to remove such goods to the custom warehouse on furnishing a security bond. That we will see later in the custom warehouse chapter. But right now you have to keep in mind that importer will have only 30 days. The goods imported by him can be kept at custom port only up to 30 days because of lack of storage capacity. At port, generally lakhs and lakhs of people along with lakhs and lakhs of goods gets landed on port at the daily basis. Since there is lesser amount of storage capacity, therefore we cannot permit the importer to keep his goods at the Indian custom port for long. Within 30 days, he have an option to either clear the goods on the payment of duty or he can remove such goods to custom warehouse on furnishing a security bond, which is generally of 3 times of the duty payable by him. If importer in any chance will not be able to clear these goods from any of this, under any of this option within 30 days, then he shall be liable to penalty thereupon with effect from the 31st day of such delay. Like within 30 days, he has to clear it for either of the following mode. If he doesn't clear it within such 30 days, then he shall be liable to pay a penalty thereupon in the name of demurrage charges. Now you can understand this penalty, this expense has to be borne by importer at the custom port on delay in clearance from the port within such specified 30 days. So you can understand whether it is a pre-importation expense or post. Obviously, this expense has been incurred after landing of goods at the Indian port. Therefore, it shall be treated as post-importation expense which has been cleared by court in the case of Mangalore Refineries and Petrochemical Limited. And without any doubt, since it is a post-importation expense, therefore it shall be ignored while computing custom duty. Is that clear? So we can understand this dismantling is a pre-import expense, therefore to be added. Installation is a post-importation expense, therefore to be ignored. Demurrage being a post-importation to be ignored. And then we talks about the commission. Let's see. Generally, commission is the amount payable by the principal to his agent. This is the basic fundamental. So, whenever goods being imported from abroad, we can say that the exporter already located abroad must have appointed his agent where he is not available. So generally, if question is silent, then we can consider it. We can assume that the exporter located abroad can appoint his agent in India, because in India he cannot have an access, so therefore he can appoint his agent in India. On the other side, importer located in India can appoint his agent abroad where he does not have any access. So generally it is presumed that exporter appointing his agent in India and vice versa. And exporter being the seller pays commission to his agent known as selling commission, and the importer being the buyer paying commission to his agent is known as buying commission. Okay. Now, importer located in India having his currency in Indian rupees while importing goods makes payment to the exporter in foreign currency. Okay. And exporter while exporting goods shall charge transaction value, invoice price at which he sold the goods. And his transaction value invoice price is inclusive of cost incurred by him along with his profit margin. So if I say exporter has to pay selling commission of rupees 1 lakh to his agent located in India, then he shall charge the transaction value after including such selling commission in the invoice. So if I say the selling commission is of 1 lakh and all expenses including profit margin including commission is of rupees 11 lakh, therefore importer shall be liable to pay rupees 11 lakh to the exporter while receiving the goods therefrom. But there is an economic fluctuatory dispute herein. Like the importer located in India having Indian currency shall convert the Indian currency in the foreign currency to make the payment to the exporter. And exporter after receiving such payment from the importer shall reimburse or shall pay selling commission to his agent located in India. So if the exporter after receiving payment in dollar makes payment of selling commission to agent located in India who is demanding his commission in Indian currency only because he is located in India, therefore exporter has to convert his foreign currency into Indian rupees while making payment of selling commission to his agent. And in any case, this foreign currency gets fluctuate on daily basis. You must have done it in your financial management under Forex, that on daily basis the currency price, the currency rate gets fluctuated. So anyhow, firstly importer converted rupees in dollar and then exporter converting dollar in rupees would amount to loss to either of the party, because currency might inflate or might deflate. So whatever the case may be, in either of the case, either importer or exporter shall suffer losses in this currency fluctuation because of receiving payment in dollar and making payment in Indian rupees. Therefore, to avoid such foreign currency exchange fluctuation, exporter may request the importer that instead of exporter making payment to his agent, importer can directly make payment to his agent located in India. Importer can pay selling commission to the agent of exporter located in India in Indian rupees on behalf of exporter himself. And since importer is making payment on behalf of exporter to his agent located abroad, therefore obviously importer shall reduce the transaction value to be paid by him to the exporter by such amount. Now, importer shall pay to exporter rupees 10 lakh instead of 11 lakh because already he has paid 1 lakh on behalf of exporter to his agent located in India. So now the transaction value as reduced by selling commission shall amount to 10 lakh. And rupees 1 lakh has been paid by the importer to his agent located in India. But lawmaker says this selling commission paid by importer is just to avoid the foreign currency exchange fluctuation. Therefore, it has to be treated as pre-importation expense. Because without this commission, the export cannot take place. That is, the exporter shall permit the exportation of goods only if importer ensures his payment including his selling commission. So this expense has to be treated as pre-importation expense because this is an expense on behalf of exporter without which exporter shall not permit the exportation of goods. Therefore, it shall be added while computing assessable value even though it is paid in Indian rupees. Okay. However, on the other side, importer after receiving his goods shall pay buying commission to the agent of importer in his foreign currency. Now, this buying commission has to be paid by importer to his agent has to be treated as post importation expense since this commission shall be paid only if importer cleared his goods from Indian port to his premises. That is, when importer makes clearance of his imported goods to his premises, then only he shall be liable to pay commission to his agent located abroad, and therefore it has to be treated as post-importation expense even though it is incurred in foreign currency, therefore to be ignored while computing the assessable value. So broadly we can say that in case of commission, selling commission is to be paid in Indian rupees which has to be added thereupon, and buying commission which is paid in foreign currency has to be ignored being post importation while computing assessable value of such goods. But there could be a probability that this commission could be paid in different currency. Let's see it all together. Now it may be possible, beta, that an exporter located abroad appoints his agent in abroad only, as he is located in some remote area or some away from coastal area, so he couldn't reach to the point of exportation of port of exportation, and he doesn't want to make his running business suffer, so located from that place itself he can appoint his agent in abroad in his country itself. If his agent is located abroad only, then such agent will be known as canalizing agent. The agent through which, through canal of which, through the route of which he can export the goods therefrom. And parallelly, it may be possible that the importer located in India appoint his agent in India only. For say, importer is located in Delhi, but he couldn't reach to coastal area such as Mumbai. So at Mumbai port, he authorized an agent to import goods on his behalf. Now, if the importer's agent is located in India and the exporter's agent is located abroad, then such agent will be known as canalizing agent. And through whom exporter delivers to his agent goods, and then agent to agent goods gets delivered, and via agent goods gets reached to the importer's point. And post then importer might ask to make payment to all three these individuals separately. Like if importer paying payment to exporter, then it will be known as transaction value. Importer making payment to canalizing agent, that will be known as selling commission, because canalizing agent located abroad is the agent of exporter, that is seller. To both these people, the payment must have been made in foreign currency itself. And after receiving his goods, importer makes payment to his commission to his agent, known as buying commission. And since his agent is located in India, therefore such commission shall be paid in Indian rupees only. Now, selling commission paid in foreign currency will be known as pre-importation expense, without which cannot be reached to the Indian port, without which goods cannot be reached to the Indian port. And since it is the pre-importation expense, therefore it shall be added while computing assessable value. On the other side, importer making payment buying commission to his agent located in India in Indian rupees, such payment can be made only once goods gets received by the importer at his point of destination. Therefore, this expense shall be treated as post-importation expense, which shall be ignored while computing assessable value. So, from the above discussion, we can conclude that commission can be of two types. One is selling and the other one is buying. Selling commission, if question is silent and nothing has been specifically mentioned that what kind of agent he is, then generally we implied that we assume that the agent is normal who is located in other country other than the country of exportation or importation. That is, the exporter located abroad must have appointed his agent in India and vice versa. To such agent, the commission must be paid in the Indian currency, and if the commission is paid to the canalizing agent, then it must be paid in the foreign currency itself. So, whatever the mode is if the commission is selling commission, that it must be treated as pre-importation expense, which is to be added while computing assessable value. On the other side, buying commission paid to the normal agent located abroad outside the country of importer, then to whom the commission must have been paid to the foreign currency. However, if the agent of importer is canalizing agent, that is, he must be located within the same country where importer is located, then the payment must have been made in the domestic currency. So, whatever the buying commission must have been paid, that shall be treated as post importation expense, which has to be ignored while computing assessable value. Okay. So, if we will conclude till here, then we can say that dismantling and installation has to be added, wherein dismantling has to be added as pre and installation has to be ignored as post. Demurrage charges being post importation shall always be ignored. Commission, if it is a selling commission made in Indian currency or to canalizing agent in foreign currency, has to be added, but if the commission is buying commission, then it shall be ignored always. Then next comes to packing charges. What do you mean by packing charges? Let's see. Now, lawmaker says that there are two kinds of packing which generally takes place at the time of delivering goods. One packing is normal packing and other one is returnable packing. If I say that goods are being imported from abroad to India, then exporter must have dispatched the goods to the huge container within which all goods being stored for the convenient delivery of the goods to the port of importation. It might consist of normal packing, that is the packing which gets delivered with the imported goods to the customer. If I say that cold drink has been supplied, that the PET bottle in which cold drink has been filled is known as normal packing, which gets carried forward with the product itself and to be retained by the consumer himself. However, on the other side, there might be returnable packing. Returnable packing means the packing which has to be returned by the importer to the exporter, which has to be returned by the buyer to the seller after consuming goods. For say, goods being imported in a large container for the convenient transportation of goods. And once goods reach to the point of importation, then the large container which gets empty thereafter shall need to get returned by the importer to the exporter himself. Now law says that returnable container has to be returned to the exporter, to the seller himself. Therefore, its cost shall not to be added while computing duty thereupon, provided such packing must be returned within a period of 6 months from the date of their importation. Like as and when they have been imported, from that particular point of time, they must be exported to the re-exported to the exporter himself. Provided. Now, if I say that returnable container, returnable packing cost rupees 10 lakh and the goods being imported is of 100 lakh. Now, the total cost is 110 lakh, out of which 10 lakh container has to be returned thereupon. But there is a condition that it must be returned within 6 months. So, now the duty has been exempted or duty has not to be charged subject to any future condition which is uncertain. Therefore, always remember that whenever under whole IDT, under whole indirect tax, the tax is not being chargeable subject to any future condition which might be uncertain, at that particular point of time, the assessee shall be liable to furnish a bond for that. For say, in the given case, importer shall be liable to pay custom duty on 100 lakh of goods being imported and on 10 lakh of returnable packing, which might not be returned within 6 months, he shall be liable to furnish a security bond either in the form of bank FD. He can keep a fixed deposit in bank, or he can mortgage his property, any of his assets, subject to such amount that the on bond the value shall be equivalent to the amount of duty chargeable, the amount of duty chargeable on such returnable packing. If I say the rate of duty is 40% and the cost of returnable packing is 10 lakh, then the 4 lakh shall be liable to be submitted with the government, with the custom officer in the name of bond. And if such returnable packing gets returned within the period of 6 months, then the bond shall get cancelled by the department, and if such packing does not get returned within the specified 6 months, then department can forfeit such bond and recover his duty chargeable thereupon along with the interest if any. Okay. So, always remember that normal packing by whatever means they have been given in the question, they shall be added while computing assessable value, whereas returnable packing if returned within 6 months need not to be added thereupon. If question is silent and only returnable packing word is given in the question, then always assume that it must be returned within the specified time period. Therefore, such amount shall be ignored while computing the assessable value. Okay. Now, the next expense which comes therein, we talks about royalty. What do you mean by royalty? Let's see. Now, for the purpose of royalty, we need to understand the concept of intellectual property. What does it mean? Lawmaker says that any property or asset being generated from intellect or brain of a human mind is known as intellectual property, which can broadly be classified under 3 categories. If the asset has been created by writing a literature or a book material, for example, if I say that I wrote a book on GST and indirect tax, then I need to take a copyright from the government authority to make it my exclusive right. That is, if I don't want my material to be copied by someone else, then I have to keep my book material copyrighted by the respective department, respective authority. Similarly, if any movie, theatre work, artwork, music work, television serial, advertisement, etc. being created by someone and they don't want to be copied by other, then they can register it with the respective authority as copyright, being the exclusive right which can be only used by the creator himself. That is, if I wrote a book and I want to get it published on my name only, then I have to get it copyright, and my material can never be copied by anyone else. Otherwise, I can sue that person in the court of law. Similarly, if a company, if an organization has created a formula, for example, if I say that Ranbaxy has created a formula for manufacturing of swine flu vaccination, then such formula can never be copied by any other person if Ranbaxy has patented it with the respective authority and make it as its exclusive right. Similarly, if a company has created his brand name over a period of time by spending large amount on his publicity and other aspects, then the brand name or goodwill created by him can be registered by him in the name of trademark with the respective authority. And whatever the right has been created in the name of trademark, patent or copyright shall be treated as the exclusive right, which can be used by the creator himself, whosoever has created it, or that creator can let it out, can give it on rent to any other person, which is known as assignment of right. And this assignment can be done on receiving a particular amount of consideration, wherein such consideration will be known as royalty. So broadly, I can say that royalty is the consideration paid for the intellectual property's assignment or sharing it with any other person. Let's understand it with the help of an example. For example, there is a US author in the name of Mr. Robin Sharma, who write down many self-improvement books. And his latest book in the name of the 5 AM Club gets imported to India. In India, there is a publication house in the name of Penguin India, who wants Robin Sharma to give him the exclusive right of reselling his books in Indian continent. Now, Penguin India requests Mr. Robin Sharma that I want that your book needs to be sold by me only in India. Now, Mr. Robin Sharma asks him the reason behind it. So, Penguin India says that if I become the monopolistic seller of your book in India, then I can decide the price of the product, in which I can make a huger amount of profit margin. And I can share a part of that profit with you in the name of royalty if you give me this exclusive right. Now, on the mutual understanding of receiving over and above the price of the book in the name of royalty or share in the profit to be made by Penguin India after becoming the monopolistic seller of this book will be known as royalty, because now Robin Sharma, after agreeing to the term, give Penguin India an exclusive right to sell his books in the Indian continent, for which Penguin India shall pay royalty to Mr. Robin Sharma for resale of his books in India. Now, if I say that the book price is 700 and Penguin India is paying 200 in addition to that as a royalty for resale, then lawmaker says that since this royalty is made for the tangible goods, that is books being imported in India, therefore it shall be added while computing the assessable value. However, it might be possible that over the period, Penguin India may request Mr. Robin Sharma to reproduce, to manufacture the book in the name of Robin Sharma within India itself. That is, Penguin India may request Mr. Robin Sharma that your books are becoming costly in Indian market because the manufacturing cost in US is comparatively higher than what we had in India because of the expensive labor in US. So the cost of manufacturing is expensive in US, plus the cost of freight for delivering goods from US to India, plus so many custom duties will be chargeable thereupon, resulting in increase in the price of imported goods in India, causing lower demand of such book in India. So Penguin India may request Robin Sharma that please give me a write on piece of paper under proper contractual agreement that your book gets published by me in India, due to which our cost will get reduced and resulting in higher demand of the book, through which both of us can share the profit. Now Robin Sharma might give him the right to reproduce such book in India, and for this right, because he is sharing, Penguin India is sharing copyright of Robin Sharma in India, for this particular purpose Robin Sharma will charge a royalty on reproduction of books in India. Let's say it is of rupees 500. So lawmaker says that if royalty is paid to the exporter for receiving the intangible right of reproducing goods in India, then this intangible right, if Robin Sharma has given him the intangible right of reproducing books in India, then against the consideration paid for this right, there are no goods being imported therein. Therefore, custom duty shall not be covered therein. And for the purpose of custom duty, such amount shall be ignored for computing assessable value thereupon. However, this intangible right has to be treated as service, and on importation of service, GST shall be chargeable thereupon. Therefore, we will see that under GST, that for the purpose of GST, the royalty paid on reproductional right shall be added in the taxable value for computing GST. Okay, so I can conclude that the royalty for resale shall be added for custom duty, because this payment is made for the tangible books being imported in India, upon which duty has to be chargeable. That means the assessable value for books shall be taken as rupees 900 plus other expenses such as freight, insurance, etc. But for the royalty paid for reproduction, it shall be ignored for the purpose of custom duty. Rather, it shall be added for the purpose of GST, because this amount has been paid against the intellectual property, against the intangible right being imported in India, which shall be treated as service to be covered under GST. Is that okay, beta? Okay. So, in case of royalty, royalty for resale shall be added, royalty for reproduction shall be ignored. Then next, we talks about inspection charges. Under inspection charges, we can say that whenever goods being imported from abroad, and especially in case of huge plant and machineries, etc., exporter might ask the importer to inspect the plant and machinery before its installation. For example, metro has been imported to India. Now the exporter wants that before making public sit in this metro, you have to conduct a proper inspection whether such metro is working efficiently or not, so as to avoid any accidental causes. Now, exporter ask importer to conduct inspection before installation of the goods being imported to India, and the inspection being put as a precondition of importation itself. That is, exporter has specifically mentioned in the contract, exporter must have specifically mentioned it in the contract that the importer shall be liable to conduct a inspection by an independent agency authorized by the exporter himself. So now, even though this inspection has been undertaken while bringing the goods to the particular destination site, that is, it is being a post importation expense because it is incurred after clearance of goods from the Indian port, But since it is the precondition of the contract without which goods can never be imported into India, therefore it shall be treated as pre-importation expense, and being pre-importation expense, it has to be added while computing the assessable value. However, conducting such inspection is not a part of contract. It is not a part of precondition of importation. Exporter does not impose any condition of such inspection. Importer is doing it on his own. Therefore, it is not a precondition, and since it is actually incurred after clearance of goods from Indian port to the destination point in India, therefore it shall be treated as post importation expense, which shall be ignored while computing the assessable value for custom duty. So in case of inspection, always remember that if it is specifically mentioned in the contract that as a precondition, then it shall be added, and otherwise it shall be ignored. Okay. So now come to next expense, next adjustment. Here we talks about the interest. Now interest is the amount paid to compensate the delay in payment, or paid to compensate the inflation in the time value of money over the period of time when payment is getting delayed due to installment or borrowing. It is also known as financial charges, the expenses incurred for financing any product or any services. Generally, we say that any consumer or buyer can purchase goods or services either in cash or in credit. If the person is making cash purchases, then we generally presume that he must be having higher purchasing power, due to which he is a surplus amount. He is having a surplus amount to make payment in a one go while purchasing any goods. However, on the other side, we generally presume in the market that the person making credit purchases having lower purchasing capacity, due to which he is able to make the payment of any particular purchases over a period of time. Now, if I say I am having two customers, two clients, Mr. A and Mr. B. Mr. A is having good purchasing power, therefore he is able to arrange rupees 10 lakh for importation of a car. And since the value of his car is rupees 10 lakh, therefore assessable value shall be taken as rupees 10 lakh, upon which custom duty shall be chargeable, let's say at the rate 40% for rupees 4 lakh. However, my other client, Mr. B, who's having lower purchasing capacity, imported the car for rupees 10 lakh, but since he is making payment over a period of time, therefore he shall be liable to pay interest thereupon for rupees 2 lakh. Now, if for I say that rupees 2 lakh has been added in rupees 10 lakh while determining the assessable value of goods, and on this whole 12 lakh custom duty gets chargeable at the rate 40% for rupees 4,80,000, then lawmaker says that it would amount to undue hardship upon the customer having lower purchasing power, because see, the person having higher purchasing power is paying rupees 4 lakh, whereas the person having lower purchasing power is paying rupees 4,80,000, wherein the burden of additional 80,000 will amount to undue hardship upon the customer having lower purchasing capacity. Therefore, by keeping this particular point in mind, government says that while determining assessable value of imported goods, the element of interest shall not to be added thereupon. That is, only rupees 10 lakh shall be taken as the assessable value, and by avoiding such hardship, duty to be payable by the Mr. B having lower purchasing capacity shall always be equal to the duty payable by Mr. A, who is having high purchasing capacity. So, in order to avoid this hardship, government says that the element of interest shall be excluded while computing the assessable value, provided there is an exception to it, provided lawmaker says that always keep in mind that interest element shall not to be added provided the value of goods does not get influenced. For example, if I say that government has allowed the importer not to add interest in its assessable value, then importer might conduct a manipulation in such a way. Importer may ask exporter that in any ways I have to pay you rupees 12 lakh. So can you make an arrangement in the invoice by reducing the price of goods as 7 lakh and by increasing the amount of interest as 5 lakh. So in any ways I have to pay you 12 lakh, that I'll be paying you. But through this manipulation in the invoice, exporter, since interest is not included, exporter shall take its assessable value as rupees 7 lakh and paying duty thereupon, resulting in tax evasion of 40% on such 3 lakhs. That is straightly 1,20,000 can be evaded even by a single importer. And such kind of manipulation can be taken by multiples of importer. Therefore, government has mentioned in the law that if it is found that due to element of interest, the price of goods imported gets influenced or manipulated. This we can easily compare by cash purchases. The car sold or car purchased in cash will amount to 10 lakh, whereas the car purchased under installment would amount to 7 lakh. Then obviously it won't be possible. It is obviously sure that the remaining balance of the price must have been included in the element of interest. Therefore, in such a case, in order to avoid such evasion, lawmaker says that I shall include the amount of interest in the assessable value, which would make your assessable value as rupees 12 lakh, upon which custom duty shall be paid at the rate 40% for rupees 4,80,000. Now, if importer begs that I am a person having lower purchasing power, then obviously government will make a stand that you must be aware of this provision. If you really want exemption from interest, then you would not have been done the manipulation which you have already done. Therefore, we can conclude that if the price of goods will remain same either under interest credit purchase or under cash purchase, then the element of interest shall be ignored while computing duty. But if such price has been manipulated, then the whole amount of interest shall get added in the assessable value. Okay. So this is all about interest. And then lastly we comes to the value of material components design and development work undertaken outside India. Herein we says that generally it might be possible that the importer located in India makes an order to the exporter located abroad. But while making such order, some kind of mutual arrangements or adjustments can be made thereupon. For example, if I say that Indian importer Videocon places an order of 2,000 computer systems to be established by Videocon in his new office premises, then the order given by Videocon to Microsoft located in US might be in such a way. Videocon may ask Microsoft to put a quoted price at which he can sell the computer systems if Videocon wants to purchase 2,000 units thereupon. Microsoft, the exporter, will quote the price wherein Microsoft might say that monitor I will give you for rupees 12,000, software for 10,000, CPU 12,000, other peripherals or hardware instruments for 8,000, overheads for 5,000 and profit margin of exporter for 10,000, which would amount to total quoted price of the computer system per unit at the rate rupees 57,000. Let's say all these amounts are given in rupees. Now Videocon may request Microsoft that you don't give your monitor to me because your monitor is finding to be expensive affair for me. And I also manufacture such kind of monitor screen for television sets. So I'll supply you a monitor at the rate rupees 3,000 per unit. That is, for me the cost of monitor is 3,000 and I'll be supplying it to you free of cost. It's very much obvious that the Videocon having monitor system to be get installed in a computer system to be received by Videocon itself, Videocon won't be charged anything from Microsoft. It's something like you purchases fabric from the market and the fabric purchased by you has been given by you to your tailor for manufacturing a dress for you. In such a case, tailor won't give you the cost of fabric which you have supplied to him. Rather, he'll manufacture a ready-made garment out of such fabric and return it to you. Now, the fabric owned by you will get returned to you in a different form of ready-made garment, upon which tailor must have charged only his labor expenses. Similarly, if the buyer located in India supplies raw material to the seller to be installed in the output to be imported by the buyer himself, then importer or the buyer does not charge anything from the seller. But the monitor screen supplied by buyer to seller is worth rupees 3,000 only. Now, Videocon might have also asked Microsoft to put the label of Videocon behind each system so as an identification mark in order to avoid stock manipulation, because Videocon has found in his past that the staff in his office might misuse his computer system by stating them that such system belongs to them. Therefore, as a code, as an identification mark, Videocon supply a dyeing machine to the Microsoft worth rupees 200 per unit, through which Microsoft imposes the label of Videocon behind each system to be supplied, and the dye being supplied by Videocon to Microsoft worth rupees 200. Now, Videocon has recently imported a software program from an engineer from Australia for rupees 10,000, let's say, and 10,000 per unit. This is the license fees of software, that is the original version of software. The license fees is paid rupees 10,000 per unit. Now, Videocon supply the software purchased by him from Australian engineer at the rate rupees 10,000 per unit to Microsoft, which is to be installed in the original version on the computer system manufactured by Microsoft. Now, Microsoft need not to impose its particular software, rather they are going to add on the software purchased by the importer himself and supplied to him, and balance amount has been incurred by the exporter, the seller himself. That is, the seller has installed CPU, other peripherals, overheads, and along with his profit margin, exporter shall charge. Now, how much amount will he charge? He will charge only 35,000, because other things he is not supplying to the buyer. Now, lawmaker says that the computer system being imported to India, and on such importation, importer is liable to compute the assessable value. And as told in the beginning, I have already told you that assessable value includes all the expenses incurred to deliver the goods at the port of importation, which includes the quoted price or the transaction value shown in the invoice, which is rupees 35,000. But obviously, only 35,000 is not the only cost at which goods being imported in India. Importer has also incurred expenses without which computer system cannot be brought to India. It means if importer has not supplied the monitor screen, then the computer system can never be taken or brought to India. Then such expense has to be incurred by the seller himself. So, lawmaker says any expense incurred by importer on behalf of exporter shall also be added while computing the assessable value. So, in the given case, rupees 35,000 being charged by the exporter from importer. In this amount, we have to add the monitor cost, that is rupees 3,000. The dies, that is rupees 200. and the cost of software being purchased from abroad, that is rupees 10,000. In this, other expenses like freight insurance shall also get added thereupon. So lawmaker says that any amount, any expense incurred by importer on behalf of exporter shall also be added, because without such expense goods can never be imported to India, and this is the expense. If importer denies to expend, then exporter has to expend this expenditure in order to supply the goods or in order to make the goods deliverable at the point of importation. Therefore, all these expenses which are incurred by importer on behalf of exporter shall be added thereupon. Now lawmaker says, in case of software, designs, development, intellectual properties, research and development work, engineering work, the cost of such work shall be added while computing the assessable value only if they are undertaken outside India. That is, in case of raw material, in case of component machines, either they are purchased from abroad or being supplied from India itself, they have to be added in the assessable value. But in case of intellectual properties like softwares, engineering work, design and development, they shall be added in the assessable value only if they are undertaken outside in India. And how we can assume that such expenses undertaken outside India? Because generally it must have been given to be paid in the foreign currencies. In other words, we can say that if any research work being undertaken in India by the buyer or any other person, and such research work has been supplied to exporter abroad for its utilization in the goods to be imported in India, then the cost of such research work shall not to be added while computing assessable value, in order to encourage more and more of such research work in India. So lawmaker says that you are foolish enough to spend software cost or intellectual property cost to abroad, and the expenses so incurred against which any software has been given to you, you are again forwarding it to the exporter himself, who will be manufacturing goods for you, through which you are incurring cash outflows from India. So all these expenses has to be added therein, resulting in increase of assessable value, upon which duty shall be increased proportionately. However, if the research or engineering work has been undertaken in India, then its cost shall not to be added while determining the assessable value. So as to encourage more of such research work, we want you to conduct more and more of such research work in India, due to which we shall not be added such amount while computing the assessable value and exempted custom duty thereupon. So broadly, I can say that under Rule 10.1, the expenses shall be added while determining the assessable value subject to certain condition. In case of dismantling, it is the pre-importation expense, it shall always be added, whereas in case of installation, it is the post-importation expense, therefore always be ignored. In case of demurrage charges, it is always the post-importation expense, therefore always be ignored. In case of commission, if it is selling commission, then it is always to be added, and if nothing is given in question, then it must be paid in Indian rupees. It must be paid in Indian rupees. And if it is specifically given in the question that it is paid to canalizing agent, then it must be paid in foreign currency. However, in case of buying commission, it shall always be ignored. If question is silent, then we presume that such amount is being paid in foreign currency. But if it is paid to canalizing agent, then it must be paid in Indian currency. In case of packing, there are two kinds of packing, normal packing or returnable packing. Normal packing shall always be added, whereas returnable packing shall be ignored, provided it must be returned within 6 months. In case of royalty, if the royalty is paid for resale against which goods are imported in India, tangible goods are being imported, then such amount shall be added. But if a right is given on a piece of paper as an intangible right to reproduce such goods in India, and against such right no tangible goods are being imported into India, then it shall be ignored for the purpose of custom duty, but shall be added under GST, wherein GST shall be charged on importation of services, because intangible right is a service and not goods. Now inspection, it says that if it is the precondition of importation, then it shall be treated as pre-importation expense and shall be added in the assessable value. However, if it is not a precondition, it is not given in the contract, therefore it shall be treated as post-importation expense and therefore to be ignored while computing assessable value. Interest shall always be ignored while computing assessable value, provided if it is found that price of goods have been influenced or affected, then the element of interest shall be added while computing assessable value. And if question is silent, then always presume the general law, that is, price has not been manipulated, due to which the amount of interest shall be ignored while computing assessable value, so as to avoid undue hardship upon the consumer having lower purchasing power. In case of raw material, components, machineries or engineering work, research work, design and development work, it says that if design and development work undertaken outside India, then only it shall be added. If it is undertaken in India, then it shall be ignored. However, in case of material component, whether it is undertaken outside India or it is undertaken in India, in both these scenarios, it shall be added while computing assessable value in pro rata basis, in the proportionate basis in which they have been consumed in the goods to be imported. For example, if I say that Videocon has supplied 2000 monitor screens to the Microsoft, but Microsoft has delivered only 1800 computer system after installing 1800 monitor units, then while computing custom duty on such imported consignment, we have to add the cost of only 1800 monitors but not 2000 monitors being supplied by importer. And in case of engineering work undertaken in India, we are not considering it because of encouraging more of research work in India. And lastly, it says any other pre-importation expense, any other expense incurred by importer and supplied to exporter for its consumption and goods to be imported in India, then such cost shall also be added thereupon. So finally, I can conclude that assessable value under custom duty shall include any expense used directly or indirectly in goods being imported. Any goods being imported in India, any expense incurred thereupon shall be added thereupon. Whether such expense incurred by exporter or they have been incurred by importer on behalf of exporter himself or on behalf of importer himself. The expense so incurred by importer on behalf of himself up to Indian port has to be added therein. For example, I can say expenses incurred by exporter, that is given in transaction value, has to be added while computing assessable value. Expenses incurred by importer on behalf of exporter, for example, if I say selling commission, importer paying selling commission to the agent of exporter located in India to avoid foreign currency exchange fluctuation. Any expense incurred by importer himself on his own behalf, for example, freight and insurance up to Indian port, has to be added in computing assessable value. That is the only expense we can exclude that. Any expense incurred by importer on behalf of importer himself after landing of goods in India has not to be considered while computing the assessable value. For example, buying commission, installation, etc., etc., etc. Other than that, all these expenses shall be added while computing the assessable value along with the profit margin of the exporter who have exported the goods. So here we can conclude the rule 10, including rule 10.1 and 10.2, for determining the assessable value thereupon, which says, which concludes, we can conclude that, always keep this formula in your mind, that any expense used directly or indirectly in the goods being imported, incurred by exporter at any point of time, or incurred by importer on behalf of exporter or by importer on behalf of importer himself up to delivering the goods at the Indian port, shall form part of assessable value for custom duty, because custom duty has to be computed at Indian port. Therefore, any expense incurred for delivering such goods at the Indian port shall be added thereupon. So here we conclude rule 10 along with today's session. Next, under session 3 for valuation, we'll conclude this chapter. Till then, thank you and God bless you all. Bye-bye.